session 3 of this series. This session will focus on industry recognized credentials and really digging into the student experience in the process of seeking to get credit for credentials. I will kick it off by just introducing myself. Brianne McDonough, Associate Director at JFF, and I bring to this project some experience having worked in prior learning assessment in Massachusetts for some statewide work, and very thrilled to be here. And I'll pass it to Bitsy.
Thanks, Brianne. My name is Bitsy Cohn. I am working as a consultant with JFF, and my background is in community college education and systems level policy development. Most recently in my career, for about the last 10 years, I've been working on helping states and systems create prior learning assessment activities and offerings. And I think that's what I bring to the table. Thank you.
Thanks, Bitsy. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Soya, Senior Program Manager with JFF. And my prior work comes mostly on the student services side of things, having worked both in direct services and community colleges prior to coming to JFF, and also doing some systems redesign, holistic student redesign. So thanks. And I think, Brianne, I'll pass it back to you.
Nikayla, if you're on the line, you can quickly introduce yourself. Our program intern is here today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikayla, and I'm an intern this summer with JFF and the learning unit. Sorry.
Thank you. All right. And with that, let's go over our agenda here today. So we're here for the third session and we're focusing on the student experience. Hopefully you joined us for the 2 other sessions that we already had. If not, you can look back on the Michigan Center for Student Success website and check those out. Today's agenda, though, will consist of, we already got through the welcome and introductions. We will introduce and review the pre-work exercise. We will have time to kind of dig into that together if you didn't get a chance to check it out. We'll do a breakout group activity where we will map some of the scenarios that we reviewed in the pre-work across the student experience. And then we'll spend time talking about the key design considerations, including the sequencing of onboarding and registration, the importance of transferability, and some ideas around data collection and ongoing assessment. And then we'll introduce some other resources and we'll wrap up. So it'll be a very quick, fast-paced moving session, as they all have been. And we will get through some great content today. So with that, we will dive into it. All right, so I realize I have a first couple of slides right in a row here. So for our pre-work exercise, Jessica, I wonder if you can pop a link to that in the chat. The Jamboard here will go over the pre-work exercise. So we asked you to read 3 different scenarios and to begin mapping the process for these scenarios along the student journey, really identifying opportunities to revise the process of how students seek credit for prior learning and credit for industry recognized credentials, and really thinking about how it's communicated to students, both when they're at the institution and also prior to them getting to the institution. And we'll talk about some early professional development needs. We raised that through the homework, early professional development needs, to really facilitate and enable this process. So as we jump into the next part, what we're really hoping is that you can imagine yourself as the student. So as you're reading the scenarios, really place yourself in the shoes of the student, asking some key questions like, what would I need to do and who would I need to meet with if I were the one in the scenario, the student in the scenario? And think about how the student engages in the process at your individual institution. For example, where would they go to get the initial information, and how would they know what they needed to do next? So with that, we will jump into the next part. So for this, we're gonna have everyone go into breakout groups, and Jessica, I'll pass it to you to introduce this.
Great. Thanks, Brianne. Can we go to the next slide? Perfect. I'm going to reshare the Jamboard link just so everybody has it. So if you click on the Jamboard, you'll see that there are 10 slides within this Jamboard. We're all going to be in this one Jamboard for a good 20 minutes. So get familiar, click around. This is where we're going to be. So for this activity, we're going to have 20 minutes total. We're going to break into 3 different groups. Group 1, Group 2, and Group 3. And these are all based on the scenarios that Brianne mentioned. So we'll have 15 minutes to work through the student experience prompts and contribute your ideas. And to do this during the exercise, you're going to use the color-coded stickies to designate your group and your scenario. So as an example, let's say that you are put into group number 1. Your facilitator in the group will tell you what group you're in, so don't worry. Let's say you're in group number 1. That means every time you contribute to the Jamboard, you're going to use the green sticky, and that's where you will put your notes. So you can see Brianne like moving around on the Jam. That's what we're going to do. And so if you scroll through the Jamboard, you'll also see the scenario for group 1, group 2, and group 3. So you'll just take a few minutes to read through, and then you will process the various points in the student experience. And the goal is to get a sense of where things are right now, and then we will share out in the end. Anything to add, Brianne?
No, I think that's good. I think the facilitators can add any additional guidance if needed once we pop into our groups. So I'll have Donna wave the magic wand and whisk us away. Welcome back, everyone. That was a super quick mapping exercise. I know our group didn't quite get through all of them, so I'm guessing the same is true for the others, but I'd love to hear just some brief reflections on what it felt like to put yourself in the shoes of the student and ask yourself some of these questions. Happy for the other facilitators to jump in or any of the participants.
Brianne, I can start. We were in group 3, and we also weren't able to get through the full mapping. We got through talking about marketing and recruitment and the application process. So essentially like first point of contact for students, and then how do students know what to do and where to go. And there were some themes, and it differed between like size of institution, whether institutions were smaller or larger in terms of number of students. But what I heard and what I see on the Jamboard is that the first point of contact is some type of like advice. Oh, wow, this is great. Like some type of advisor or person with technical experience who then like feeds into the next process, which is getting the credential evaluated. And so there's a technical level of knowledge that is required there, which can make it sometimes difficult to systematize when there is such technical knowledge required. Those seem to be some of the things that I heard, but I'll pause and see if anybody from group 3 wants to jump in.
I'll jump on for 2. First of all, I want to apologize to anybody who's looking at a blue sticky that is actually theirs, because I got over enthused about making sure my team was putting in blue, and Erica pointed out to me that others were contributing. So technological oops. So if you see yourself there in a blue and say, what the heck, that was me, sorry. The pieces and parts that you see in there is that there's actually quite a lot of places. I think that was part of the theme, is that there are a lot of places where people attach to this, where students learn about this and come into this. And I think it can be part of the, like, what's good and what's not good. And a major theme that went throughout ours is that there's, for those who have these things in place, there's a lot of information and a lot of options, and maybe too many options and too much information.
Brianne, you're muted.
Thanks. That was the second time I've done that. Yeah, I'm happy to have other folks chime in. Also, we'll say that with our group, I was in group 1. We had the scenario that was really focused on like dual enrollment students. And so thinking about like, how did these students who are maybe not interacting with the college's standard orientation process, finding out about credit for credentials, and if they don't also have a dedicated advisor, who can they go to ask those questions? So it's definitely relevant to kind of think it through a little bit. And we had some good input, you know, just being there to support the student and ask them questions along the way, among other ideas. Any other thoughts there?
Brianne, I want to share a comment from the chat about the current process at my institution is very long and not well used. If there's a chance during today's session for folks to share either a link or document related to their process, that would be helpful. And so thanks, Erica, for dropping the link to the MI transfer website. This seemed to be something like great variation in processes. So we definitely welcome any links that folks want to drop, or if anybody would like to expand on that, just wanted to elevate that point.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. I think that came through too when we did the survey for the other session, just hearing the variety of like types of requirements that go into the credential evaluation process. Like in the application process, some colleges require signature from the dean. Like there were some unique requirements that kind of feel like they may send the student off in many different directions. So thinking about what that's like from the student's experience is really important. All right, so moving on. So I wanted to just share this image. This image comes from one of the CALE resources that we are going to share a little bit later in the session, but this is a sample process map so that you can begin starting to think about what is the college's process. And
Brianne, sorry to interrupt, but we're not seeing your screen. We're still looking at the Jamboard.
Oh, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the process map. So just wanted to give folks a minute to kind of see all the ways in which the student is interacting with these different departments at the institution as they navigate the process of seeking credit for credentials. This chart really represents sort of what I would describe as the front end of the process, the things the student needs to do before that credential goes through its evaluation process, which is more what I would say is like behind the scenes process. So just take a few seconds to follow this chart in one direction. It feels like a little maze, but it'll make sense. Just take a moment to soak that in, and then we're going to dive into it. All right, Betsy, I'm going to pass it to you.
Great, thank you. I think that, you know, and given a lot more time, we could have deep conversations about these things. But part of what you'll see from all of your conversations on the Jamboard and thinking about this whole process, that you know, things arise, and if it's a consolation, in my experience, I'm not hearing anything I haven't heard before that hasn't been done or hasn't been looked at by your peers in other institutions and across the country who have worked forward on some things. So we talk about maybe some key considerations to think about as you're moving forward. So the students' interactions with key departments and decisions have to be aligned to ensure the student will learn about the PLA opportunities, be informed of credit awards prior to registration for classes. We can see the importance of that if they're registering for classes they don't have to take, they're wasting time and money. Understand how credits earned can take the place of courses. If they don't understand that that is an actual positive opportunity for them, they might not choose to take advantage of it. And then encounter informed staff and advisors to guide them through each step of the process and answer questions. And the piece of this that I always push really hard at is that everyone is involved in the process of moving a student from, I'm interested in finding out if I can get credit for what I know, to here's the credit on your transcript and we've saved you time and money. That every single department in the institution is in some form or fashion often involved with that student. And a broad knowledge and a good communication and sharing of knowledge is really key for these things. And also currency, making sure that if you are the holder of the information, that you're also sharing it in a current way with the people that you're working with. Students should be warned if plans for earning credit for credentials may impact transfer plans or any potential financial aid implications. We won't get into that, but that's a very important consideration. And one thing to think about is that in the current workforce pathways transfer agreements that you're building, there is a clause within that agreement that says that institutions will accept this credit for transcript, which is an extremely powerful policy-based thing to do for your students so that you eliminate that whole question of should I or shouldn't I based on where I'm going or what's going to happen when I get there. It's essential to work across departments to design the process. I can't emphasize that enough.
Thanks, Bitsy. So now I'm going to talk just a little bit about what it means to really promote equity in when you design programs and processes that help students gain credit for credentials. You should really think about how to provide the student outcomes up front to communicate the value of students who earn credit for credentials. It saves them time, it saves them money. It also honors their prior knowledge, which I think is a big confidence boost and really important for all learners. Colleges should invest in student outreach and recruitment efforts, both prospective students and marketing current opportunities to existing students that help to close that gap across student demographics. We see that not all learners know that they can take advantage of credit for prior learning, credit for credentials. So focusing in on special populations and making sure that they get the messaging and the support they need to really take advantage of the cost savings, the time savings. You can consider partnering with CBOs and K through 12 organizations to design that holistic support. What does it look like to design that for students who are coming through all early college or youth learners who have done apprenticeships and are walking in the door with credentials? Think about partnering with CTE training providers and employers as well to design upskilling opportunities, especially for workers or employees who might be lower wage or entry-level employees. What are the opportunities to partner to upskill and also promote economic mobility for them? And then one just really important criteria or thought as well is just needing to track these student outcomes. It's very important to be tracking who has access to this, who's taking advantage of it. We call that the uptake rate, the number of credits that have been awarded, the retention and persistence outcomes, what their employment outcomes are. Do they have better employment outcomes given the strong alignment with industry credentials? And then always disaggregating these results across race and ethnicity, so you can continue to close those opportunity gaps for students. And next slide is going to be Bitsy.
This is just for those of you who were able to come to the other two sessions. You know that we started out talking about some of the things that are components of excellent policy. And again, based on a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge across the nation. And what we try to do in each of these is to kind of point out where those things land in terms of the topic we're talking about. So standards and values around this, that quality and transparency. This is one of those ones where it's not just about having the information for students. It's about having current and useful information for students. It's about having it readily available to them. They don't have to come in and dig or go through some kind of a gauntlet in order to get to where they need to be, which is a norm, honestly, for programs when they're first starting out sometimes. Marketing and recruitment have to understand what this is about because they may often be the first person that anybody sees or talks to, or they are the purveyors of information. So really important in terms of the policy considerations, what's in there for marketing and recruitment. The application process, in policy, one of the best things you can do for yourself in an application process is to create an application that then institutions can use across departments, divisions, so that you know that at least for the essential information that you're collecting or guiding with the student, that it's consistent across departments, which is a big student focused activity. And then in the student record, making sure that transcripting, transfer, and articulation are well represented. Sometimes that can be a spot where we do everything right and then we don't get it on the transcript, and that can be problematic for everybody. And then an established grievance process where students have an opportunity to say, well, wait, I didn't maybe give you as much information as I could have to tell you what I know and how I can demonstrate it. So having something available that allows that, rather than just in the other side of not having this process is it's a because we said so, and that's the end of the conversation, which is certainly not a student-friendly practice. So keeping those things in mind as you're building policy is important.
Thanks, Betsy. All right, so we are running a little bit ahead of schedule. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time back in the Jamboard, going back to just thinking about we have this labeled closing thoughts, but we're gonna spend a little bit more time on this. And I'm gonna pass it to Jessica while I share the Jamboard link. And Jessica, do you take it away and I'll pull up the Jamboard.
Thank you. And thanks everyone. So if you look at the final slide in the Jamboard, closing thoughts and reflections, you'll see two guiding questions there that we want to spend some time on. Where else do students go for information about credit for credentials? And as a result of this session, what remaining questions do you need to explore? And I want to have us, since we've got some time, keep these in mind, but I want to elevate some things I was hearing in my breakout group just around the challenges of standardizing industry recognized credentials depending on student scenarios and student situations. And so if anybody, I think that might be a good place to start, is by identifying some challenges, because then we might be able to collectively identify some opportunities based on what other folks are doing at their institutions. So with that, if anybody wants to share as a result of like what they've heard today, a challenge or maybe a next step they want to take, something like that, feel free to put that on the Jam or feel free to put it in the chat. We'll give everybody like 30 seconds to a minute to do that, and then we'll just start sharing out some reflections.
Jessica, this is Ed from Delta, and I appreciate the question. And I want to go back to the scenario that our pre-work for this session, and the one involving the vocational school I thought was spot on. As we're working with secondary CTE agencies in trying to find the best mechanisms to do recognition. And I know we do a great job here at the college, but as these conversations come up or they come up with and from other agencies, we don't do this enough to really understand, I think, how to really streamline at the industry certification level, the acceptance of that, which I know we can do a much better job at. And we go to that, to our portal, our website with that information, and that's our beginning point. It's almost as if one needs an advocate or an ombudsman, if you would, specifically related to industry credential conversation and that point, that go-to person. Right now for my area would be someone or an SME in my area needed to know that knowledge, but we get a request from industry and agencies, and students, and so it's coming from different areas and not just from students as far as the question. So I think it would be good if anyone does it well, how they're working with these secondary CTE or institutions specifically related to industry credential and issuing it. Where is that issued? Where is that best issued within the process? When they earn it, when they transfer, is it an auto issue? I mean, I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, thanks.
It's a great question.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're not the only one thinking that. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Does that resonate? Does anybody have a great idea to offer?
I just have a thought from the CTE perspective. Is right now the state is going through a process of aligning all the CTE programs with business and industry credentials. And the programs that have already been aligned with credentials and through employer surveys are on the OCTE website. So I think it's developing those partnerships with your CTE programs, because the work is being done right now. And one of the parts of the grant work is trying to develop those relationships with the post-secondary partners on which credentials will align with some of your programs. So I think that if there are some of you that are currently participating in these calls and you're looking at the opportunity to align with CTE programs, that might be a good thing to get that information to one of you at this organization to communicate with the CTE office, because a bunch of us working on the grants are trying to find you, the post-secondary people, to help develop those credit agreements based on credentials.
Really good input. Thank you. It sounds like something actionable that we can do as well, increase collaboration there. So while we were chatting, we had a lot of new ideas come into the Jamboard. So where else do students go for this information? Teachers, counselors, labor unions, the faculty, maybe the veterans office, registrar's office for sure, asking friends, other students. Really just quite a variety. So looking at all these other people who they're seeking this information to, do they have it? Do they have the right information? Do they have the current information? Are you providing it to them? So thinking about that a little bit, especially if they're outside of the college, how are we intentionally communicating what's going on in the credential space at our institutions? And then what are the remaining questions that we have to explore? Thinking about the reporting and the student information system, which we're going to touch on soon. Addressing it specifically on the website, not just under transfer credit, increasing interest overall. Thinking about how to evolve industry partnerships. Anything else stand out to the team?
I'm jumping in. I think that it's one of those things where we want to offer a richness of experience for the student, but we end up creating, sometimes with the best of intention, a chaotic experience for the student rather than a rich one. And so part of what you're looking at here is how important it is to find those touch points and to have something intentional from whatever your central provider of this service is. So it may be that at your institution, there is a department that does this routinely, and you start with them, say, okay, you're going to be the conduit because the majority of people come to you. Well, we're going to create information coming out of your office, and we're going to start sharing that around in a way that is more focused and more standardized to some extent, so that we can make sure that we're capturing all of the people that come in, and sometimes creating one good solid intake opportunity that is scalable to other departments, and then sharing that and helping people to get on board with it is a better way to go than just to say to everybody, we somehow need to sit down and make this all gel in a particular way. Starting with an example can be very helpful. In many ways, what you have in terms of your institutional websites and that kind of thing, whomever is responsible for that, and I'll go back to marketing and recruitment. The two most important departments, in my opinion, on your campus are marketing and recruitment and registrars when it comes to making sure that students are getting the latest and the clearest information. So seeing if they can take a lead in making sure that there's currency and clarity and information, and that you're able to identify where students are getting held up or where they might be coming in that you're not expecting. Just a thought on that one.
Great, thanks. I'm happy to move on, or if other folks want to chime in the last couple of minutes before we move on. Okay, moving on it is. So back to the PowerPoint. So there are a number of resources that we want to share, and I'll just chime in here and take this away if that's okay, Jessica. All right, so the first one we have up is this process map. This is the process mapping exercise that I shared on that earlier slide. If this is something that your institution is really looking at, trying to get a better grasp on, this process map resource is really excellent. It's designed around PLA/CPL, but the way that it's laid out is still, relevant enough to consider the process for industry recognized credentials. So have a look at this if you're interested in digging into this and putting some action items around following this session. This second resource here is more around the communications lens. So how do you communicate credit for prior learning to attract and retain students? And how do you think about outreach? This is a great toolkit if you're wanting to work with your marketing department to think about, how are we communicating the value of credit for credentials and how are we incorporating that into our overall messaging? This third resource here is very, very good. It talks about how to do data tracking within your institution. And it really focuses on how to utilize your campus's existing student information system to create some workaround solutions to track which students are pursuing credit under credentials. And it's also relevant to share related here that the Michigan Community College Association is getting ready to convene Aleutian and Gensbar colleges to learn more about what functionality and to design some functionality and solutions to help manage and track students who pursue credit for industry credentials a little bit more effectively. So we're looking forward to that resource coming down the pipeline soon. And lastly, this PLA Boost article, this provides some great information on how you might want to track and assess your college's program. And it is results from 72 different institutions on adult student outcomes, but it provides great details for what are some of the key performance indicators, short-term and long-term outcomes that you could think about tracking for these programs. Lastly, we just want to share that, as you know, this workshop series here today, session 3 on the student experience, is part of a 4-session workshop series. And in the next workshop series, we're going to be talking once again about aligning credentials. But this workshop is going to be a little bit of a different spin on it because we're excited to be working with the Michigan College Community College Association to be able to share this new website that Erica and Donna are developing. Erica, happy to have you jump in if you want to share a little bit more about this work that you're leading. Or Donna.
Sure, thanks. Oh, thanks, Brian. Can you hear me okay? This is Erica.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm struggling a little bit with internet stability. Thank you. Thanks for all the work that you've done to walk us through this. This was a great session today. So for many of you on the call, hello, it's good to see you join us today. The slide that you see on the screen is obviously from our development site, but it should look very familiar to those of you who are frequent mytransfer.org users, because it is the MyTransfer website. And as we've been talking about throughout this series, all of this work is really culminating in building out new functionality on the transfer network. So community colleges and universities can actually document in a centralized place, very similarly to how we document how credits transfer between institutions of higher education on the transfer network. I'm showing you an example here from Alpena Community College. And if a student at Alpena has a CDL level A, and they submit their CDL to the registrar's office, they can earn credit for UTT 206, Equipment Vehicle Operations. They'll earn 2 credit hours for that. They'll be awarded 2 credit hours for that. We have the option of providing some additional information to students in the comments that, of course, at Alpena, the CDL needs to be current when submitted to the registrar's office. And they very helpfully are providing students with a little more information, letting them know that if they have a CDL and it's expired, they can visit the Secretary of State to renew an expired license. In the case of Alpena, this course is required for their utility technology program, their line worker program. And they find that many students come to the college with a CDL already, so it's a natural fit. In the next session that Brianne and team referenced is when you will be able to, we'll do a demo of this site, provide you with some more background on this. And then that session will focus a lot on asking you to get prepared for how your institution can start documenting how you award credit for credentials. The screenshot that you see here is the sum total of all the information that we'll be asking from you so that your information can appear on the MTN. So if you want to keep this slide for your reference, please do, and we will provide you with more additional information when we're back together in October. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica, for jumping in there. Yeah, so we hope that we will see you at our October session. Thank you once again from our team for attending today, and I will pass it to Erica and Donna if they would like to offer any final closing.
I put in the chat, and just in case you didn't read it, that these slides as well as the recording will be posted on the events page under the mcca.org website. So if you want to share this with colleagues, if you want to review any information that was covered today, perhaps blow up those Jamboard comments a little bit bigger so you can see them easier. All that information will be out there and probably in a day or two.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a great, great rest of your week and great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.